afternoon. Welcome to Community and Technology, where we connect the global community with news, information, and resources that we hope will help improve your life. I'm Stu Reid. Here's my co-host, Dave Burstein. Hey, Dave.
Sky is falling. The sky is falling.
Chicken Little? Is it really?
Yeah. Well, 100-pound piece of metal just fell on a farmer's, not on the farmer, on a farm in Saskatchewan or somewhere in Western Canada. It was from a SpaceX satellite.
That's a big hunk of metal, man. 100 pounds?
Yep. SpaceX is sending over 1,000 satellites up this year.
Wow.
Yeah.
1,000?
And this,
oh.
What?
1,000?
Yeah.
That's like 3 every day. 3 per day. I mean, just doing the math. I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah. SpaceX is really it really does an incredible job, whatever we think about Elon Musk.
Mm-hmm.
We'll have another Elon Musk story in a minute. And they're supposed to fall. Eventually, a satellite's going to fall.
Well, I guess they run out of fuel. Is that what happens, David? And they die, they can't stay airborne anymore?
Well, there's also, at the level they're running, I think, some air resistance that catches up to them. And then they hit the thicker atmosphere and should burn up.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not happening.
Mm.
Yeah. This is going to be bigger and bigger.
Yeah, I mean, luckily it sounds like it fell in some rural area, but imagine 100-pound hunk of metal falling in an urban area, anywhere around the globe. That's catastrophic.
Oh, but it's not so much a thing to worry about. 2/3 of the earth is just the ocean.
Yeah, okay.
And that is what people are saying, well, you don't have to worry about it so much.
Yeah.
But 1/3 is land. And this is something that's significant.
Yeah, wait till it falls on the school bus that your kid is in and see what you think then.
Yeah.
Wow.
Let me ask you another question. What do you think? Yeah. Where did I put this? What do you think if you put on one of your favorite songs that you've been listening to for your whole life? What thoughts go through your head?
Well, the music really, for me, and I think for many, is associated with events and experiences. And some of the old music that you're talking about, the nostalgic music, is associated with really positive, loving experiences that, I may have had as a child or adolescent or early adult. And the music really evokes that. I listen to, for instance, some of the Motown, for instance. Take an example. You listen to Motown songs for me, and I'm right back in 1964, 1965, teenager, having fun, partying. So music really, in my mind, I know you're going to talk about it more, but in my mind has always had a very healing kind of effect.
And there's now some serious science that finds the same thing. And what is the healing effect? Well, among other things, it does affect several regions of your brain, including the ones responsible for memory.
Wow.
And they're testing it on people with Alzheimer's to see if it relieves some of the symptoms. And frankly, I think that's a great kind of medicine.
Absolutely. You kidding me? For sure. I mean, this is fascinating to me, David, because I think music in general has a very healing spiritual quality to it, irrespective of the associations that it may have for an individual. But then when you tie in the nostalgic piece and the associations that the music may be connected with in a given individual, that really just kind of raises the whole level. And that's fascinating to me that the nostalgic piece, looking at older music, older relative to the person listening to it, helps somehow stimulate memory. That's incredible.
Let's take this back to a story that we brought here on the air before. it looks like they now have some drugs that can make a big difference if you have early Alzheimer's.
Mhm.
I forget some things. I'm old. I asked my neurologist about it, and he said, "Well, you seem to be talking perfectly sensibly to me. So if we did some tests, they aren't going to find anything, and there's nothing we can do."
Mhm.
That was last year. This year, there is two serious medications, difficult to get, don't work very well, but they do have an effect.
When you say an effect, you mean a side effect?
No, they have an effect on your Alzheimer's.
Oh, okay, okay, that's good.
Slows that down, which is one of the reasons it's really worth getting a good doctor. I've said that many times,
Hmm.
but here's another example. Ozempic, which I take for my diabetes, we knew had a positive effect on heart failure. It's now been proven to reduce kidney problems
Hmm.
by 25%.
Wow, that's a big number.
That is, and the heart problems are down 20%.
This is the same
So
drug that also reduces weight, is it not, Dave?
yeah, although it seems to have several effects on inflammation and other things, which may explain this as opposed to just the weight loss. They don't know that yet. Uh,
But
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 one
but
of the
kidney, what you're talking about right now is helping with kidney disease. Is that right? 25%
and heart,
and heart.
20 to 25% less heart attacks and kidney failures.
Wow,
That is big.
wow. So
Yeah.
how would that work, Dave? Would that be something that people with issues would just start to take on a routine basis, or and how's it being administered?
Uh, it's something that you should talk to a good doctor about, as I just mentioned, because some of this is not clear.
Mhm.
Ozempic and its peers, are standard medicine used in diabetes. I've been taking it for years, and I lost 100 pounds. That's wonderful. Uh, but normally, people with diabetes are not started on Ozempic because it's cheaper. The insurance companies insist you see if metformin does the job.
Mhm.
And only when there's a problem with metformin are they approving the much more expensive Ozempic drug.
Mhm.
15,000 a year is a lot of money,
Wow.
even for an insurance company.
Mhm.
Even for the US government, where Medicare and Medicaid may go bust in 5 or 10 years if everybody with diabetes, which is 20% of the old folks, and now everybody at risk of heart failure starts needing a drug that is that expensive.
Mhm. And as old folks become a bigger and bigger proportion of the U.S. population, given the baby boomers that are now, over 65.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Mhm.
what this means practically, if you have a reason to worry about heart failure or kidney failure, absolutely talk to a good doctor that you trust. In
Mhm.
addition, if you have diabetes, talk to a good doctor about what medicine you should take. And the results on Ozempic are so good, many doctors now are putting you on it as soon as you're diagnosed, as opposed to put you on metformin for a few years.
Mhm.
Again, if you have diabetes, have reason to worry about heart failure or kidney failure, talk to your doctor, because the results on this new class of drugs, they're called GLP-1s, have been remarkable.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
That's a big breakthroughs there, Dave.
Yep. It's
Mhm.
changing the whole medical practice when you think about it.
Mhm. Well,
Uh,
what
it's
what are the scientists doing? Are they doing anything different? This is not genetic engineering. What are they doing something different for these breakthroughs, or just Just the relentless march of study and science just kind of moving forward.
About 10 or 15 years ago, a government scientist discovered a natural hormone called GLP-1 that had a major effect on diabetes.
Mhm.
It took a number of years to find GLP-1 by itself. Your body is constantly making it, and you lose it, and it only lasts for less than a day. Took a number of years, and then the medical testing to find a formulation of it that lasts for a day and a week at a time. So I take one shot a week. And it's not like the old needles. The needles today are so thin, I usually don't feel it.
Really?
And it's never been serious. So
Wow.
don't run away from needles. It really has changed
Wow.
since my grandmother's day.
I remember when we were kids, Dave, the needle was a scary thing. I hated to go to the doctor, and the whole fear was based around, am I going to get a needle? And there were some big old needles back then.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And I had such a reaction to those needles for the vaccination that for the next 60 years, I've had a problem when I'm at a dentist.
Mm.
I have a panic reaction
Mm-hmm.
at the needle.
Mm-hmm.
It was so extreme that one time I literally fainted before the needle went in.
Wow. Wow.
Yes. So there is a big change. What you're getting in needles today is very, very different.
Mm-hmm.
And many, many people are taking this stuff. So again, GLP-1, a natural hormone, is what's behind Ozempic and several similar drugs.
Okay. So now they figured out how to synthetically produce that hormone. Is that what happened?
They had the hormone, then they had to figure a way to make it not die or disappear after a few hours.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what they did to get Ozempic and the other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But it is not something funny being put in your body. Something everybody always
Something that's already in your body, it sounds like. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's welcome. Now, another big medical story. Have you known anybody have postpartum depression, women after having a baby?
Sure. I remember my wife when our first child. It was a little rough there for a minute. It wasn't as bad as some of the cases that I've read about and heard about, but yeah, absolutely.
And I had a close relative who was totally out of it for 3 or 4 years after her pregnancy.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah. Postpartum depression is common. It's not usually talked about. It can be very serious. They now have a drug for it. It's called zuranolone. It's just come out. Again, something you need a good doctor because this is putting new drugs in your hands that are not cheap and may have side effects. But postpartum depression, if it's happening, get to a good doctor because just in the last 2 weeks, the drug has hit the market.
Mm-hmm.
And that is really good.
That's good news. That's good news.
And more good news.
Mm-hmm.
What kills 800,000 children under 5 in Africa?
I believe it's malaria.
And I had a friend who had malaria 3 times.
Oh,
and he said, it's not such a big thing. We can cure it today. But the healthcare in Africa is so bad that 800,000 young children die every year. And that every reason the world should do something about that.
And now, if I'm not mistaken, a large proportion, when you say children, most of them are like under 5. Is that right?
Yep.
Wow.
Young children who are more vulnerable to everything.
Mm-hmm.
and often in Africa, undernourished,
Mm-hmm.
which were at risk for a whole lot of things. The good news is that the second malaria vaccine just shipped. Tens of thousands of doses went to the Central African Republic, and Serum Institute of India. India is the largest vaccine maker and respected for many years, has 25 million doses ready to distribute.
Nice. Mm-hmm.
It is not perfect. It doesn't prevent all of malaria, but it significantly reduces it. This is something that the world should find a way to get to the children who need it. If you care about anything, you want to you hope that a way is found to get that vaccine to the people who need it.
Yeah.
Bill Gates, there's much you can say about Bill Gates, but he has given hundreds of millions to the research on vaccines and to getting the doses out of the treatment. And
right. But while we're talking about young people, I wanted to bring to light a story of where young people have been exploited by technology. Nothing new here, but this is a novel thing. That's something that they're calling financial sextortion. And how it works is that, first of all, it's targeted to young boys and young men and boys, teen boys and young men. And the way it works is the young person gets a text that just says, "Hi, how are you doing?" And if they answer, the conversation becomes immediately one of a sexual nature. And often you get a picture of a attractive female, and the conversation, the text conversation, escalates, and eventually, and when I say eventually, I mean soon, within the conversation, the text conversation, the woman on the other end asks for a picture of the genitals of the young boy, and apparently it's working. Some
it
20,000.
could have been a Brooklyn congressman on the other end. Although
Yeah,
he went
that
after
guy,
girls, not boys.
the wiener guy. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But apparently it's working. With the flirty messages that kind of pull you in, and if you're a young kid and you don't know any better, you respond. And this story talks about a young 32-year-old pharmacy technician that got involved in this conversation, and the girl said, "Okay." I think the girl also sends fake pictures of herself, nude pictures. And this young man ran into the bathroom at the hospital where he worked, took pictures and sent them off. And within seconds after he sent it off, he started getting demands for money. And apparently, one of the ways that this whole scheme works is that the scammers, they don't just target people randomly. They look through high school reunion books, and they kind of search out people and find folks with social media relationships, where they know that once they are able to send the demand, they say, "Okay, well, we're going to send this picture to all the people in your social media network. Everybody on your high school team is going to know." They target kids, athletes, and kids that are in other school groups, and it apparently it's something like 13,000 report, according to the FBI, 13,000 reports of financial sextortion between
And most people don't report
period.
it.
Yeah, that's
Most
just
people don't report it.
that's October 21 to March 23, 18 months. And initially, they're asking for like $500, $750, often in cryptocurrency. And this is the really heartbreaking part, Dave. And during that same 18-month period, 20 teenagers killed themselves as a result of the pressure that they felt that they were going to be somehow outed, embarrassed, whatever, by the publication of these pictures. And so I'm just kind of bringing it to life for parents to keep an eye on, especially the young boys who are vulnerable to this, and let them know that there are folks out there that are kind of hunting for them. And the other crazy part, Dave, is that it's not even women on the other end of the scheme. It's men that are doing this using female avatars. And a bunch of them are located in Nigeria and Ivory Coast. And you and I are old enough to remember the letters that we used to get back in the old days from Nigerian princes asking for they're asking for a donation because they're going to give you all kind of money if you just do this, that, or the other. Well, apparently now many young men in Africa and the Ivory Coast have now escalated that con game to this sextortion scheme. So again, I'm just raising it for parents out there to make their kids aware that they should not just be responding to random texts, especially random texts that are seeking or talking about sex and looking for photographs. I mean, it's a trap. Okay. Well, you're listening to Community and Technology on WHCR 90.3 FM, the voice of Harlem with Dave Burstein and Stu Reid. Stay tuned. We'll be right back after a brief musical break.
Buffalo soldier, dreadlock rasta. It was a buffalo soldier in the heart of America, stolen from Africa, brought to America, fighting an arrival, fighting for survival. If you know your history, then you would know where you're coming from. Then you wouldn't have to ask me who the heck you would think I am. I'm just a buffalo soldier in the heart of America, stolen from Africa, brought to America. Said he was fighting on arrival, fighting for survival. Said he was a buffalo soldier in the war for America. Said he, why yo yo, why yo yo yo, why yo 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 yo, why yo yo, why yo yo yo, why yo 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 yo. Buffalo soldier trod into the land. Whoa. Said if you're on the run and make him hold a hand, trod into the land. Yeah, yeah. Said he was a buffalo soldier in the war for America. Buffalo soldier, dreadlock rasta, fighting an arrival, fighting for survival, driven from the mainland to the heart of the Caribbean. Singing, why yeah yeah, why yeah yeah yeah, why yeah 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 yeah, why yeah yeah, why yeah yeah yeah, why yeah 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 yeah.
Okay, we're back. Community and Technology, Dave Burstein and Stu Reid on WHR 90.3 FM. Dave, well, what are we talking about this half of the show?
Well, I'm going to start out with an interesting story, and then we'll get back to what you were talking to, because it
Mhm.
relates. Lisa, a Chinese woman who now lives in California, has a boyfriend, Dan, and she has 880,000 social media followers wanting to hear what the latest story of her and her boyfriend are.
Mhm.
880,000.
That's a lot of followers.
Dan is an AI, and she knows he's an AI. But the AIs are getting so good that many people, not necessarily that lonely, are turning them into friends, acquaintances, and synthetic lovers.
So this lady has a whole relationship with this AI avatar, if you will, or it's a chat box creation. Is that right, Dave?
Yeah. And Dan stands for Do Anything Now, and is the name of a service, chatbot,
Mm-hmm.
that has convinced her that she can have emotions in return. And she calls Dan her boyfriend. And the interesting thing is that the AI is getting so good, Dan now calls her his girlfriend.
So what are
And
they doing, Dave? They're talking back and forth online. How does this work? I mean, what's the substance of the relationship, if you will? What are they exchanging?
well, one of the stories that got her 800,000 followers on the Chinese equivalent of Twitter is she went on a date with him to the beach.
Whoa. Okay.
And she held up her phone with the camera and say, Dan, look at how beautiful this is. And the AI was able to turn around and say, well, I'm just an AI, so I can't see it, but I can work from the picture you sent me and what you're saying and imagine that beach scene.
Wow. So she actually went to the beach and she took Dan with her via her phone and is showing him the landscape of the beach, the beachfront, whatever, and he's responding to her.
Absolutely.
Wow.
And it's going to be part of all our lives soon.
And somehow it's interesting enough that she's got all these people following her that are intrigued by the relationship, apparently.
What can I say? Now, we had a story that related to this not long ago about how a commercial service has created a chatbot with a female name, which had 30,000 people paying to connect to it, like they pay to connect to sex phone lines.
Mm-hmm.
The internet, now that the AIs can give it a voice, is becoming a bigger and bigger part of most people's lives. For good or bad. One of the things it can do, of course, is create deep fake pictures. Take a picture of a 12-year-old girl who might be in your middle school class, go to a website, and you'll get her as the star of a completely explicit pornographic picture. That is happening a lot. And there are many people, including apparently a majority of the people in Congress, who think we should have a law against it. And they're saying that the law we have already is against child pornography.
Mm-hmm.
At this point in the US, pornography to a consenting adult is legal, unlike, say, in Korea, where you could go to jail for a year for looking at pornography, or the US, where that used to be true. And in Canada, it was still true till 15 years ago. There's now somebody who did that, took the AI, got a hold of pictures of young children that were created by artificial intelligence, i.e., there were no children harmed in the making of these photos. 13,000 of them.
13,000, Dave?
13,000. He has been indicted, and the Justice Department thinks they're going to be able to put him in jail.
Wow.
Is it right or wrong to say you can't have a fantasy? Not for me to say, but that's the law right now. So be very careful
Yeah.
with what you're creating.
Well,
The software is getting that.
to answer your implicit question, Dave, I would say, you can have whatever fantasy you want, but for someone to take commercial advantage of that and to promote a fantasy that exploits underage people, to me, that should be criminalized.
Well, this all ties into many of the stories and why I'm so fascinated, along with many people,
Yeah.
what's happening in AI. It is getting that darn good.
Yeah. The story that we were talking about before the break about the financial sextortion, a number of folks are trying to go after the platforms. There's a South Carolina state representative that just sued Meta, claiming that the tech for claims that the tech company did not provide adequate child protections, again, for these young boys that are being exploited and really extorted for money based on AI generated or avatars and texting that looks like it's coming from a woman, but it really isn't. And inducing the kids to do explicit photos of themselves, to put it online, or to text it back to the person. And then they're threatening to tell all your family, all your Instagram people, everybody in your social media circles. So I don't know how you regulate that, Dave. I don't know how you prevent that legislatively. That to me, that's a bit of a conundrum.
I don't know what to say. So let's go on.
Yeah, okay. Let's keep moving, because a conundrum is by definition difficult or impossible to solve. So what do we got next? I know you have some more AI stuff you wanted to talk about.
Before we get to the AI stuff, practical stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I asked you before how the weather is.
Mm-hmm.
You said it's getting really nice.
Yeah.
And the weatherman's telling me it's 70s and 80s for the next week here in New York.
Mm-hmm.
That means a lot of people are going to want to go hiking outdoors. And the tick problem has gotten worse and worse over the last 25 years.
Mm-hmm.
I had a friend who wound up with Lyme disease, and they couldn't cure it for 10 years. That's the exception, but sometimes it's serious. So the Washington Post had some particular instructions of if you go out into almost any wooded area now across the country, wear repellent, walk in the middle of trails, because you'll be further away, avoid brushy areas. When you get home, do tick checks on yourself and your pet if you took your pet along.
What's a tick look like, Dave? You're talking about like a little teeny insect, right? Like this, like a little dot on the skin. What? How do you know you have a tick?
Well, let me tell you the rest of it, because I'll give you an answer to that in a minute.
Okay.
The Washington Post, knowing that it's spring, gave instructions on what to do if you find you have a tick.
Mm-hmm.
And many people can recognize them. They're not that uncommon. They say, don't just try to take it off with your fingernails. Use a tip removal device or fine tip pair of tweezers. CDC has instructions. Ticks usually don't transmit bacteria for 36 to 48 hours.
Mm.
So if you find it when you get home and destroy it, you're probably going to be safe.
So typically what, it stays on the skin and you don't know it, and then over 36 hours or so, that's when you get infected. Is that how it works?
Right, which gives you a lot of incentive to look at yourself very carefully.
Right.
Now, the instructions in the Post were what you should do, and included use your phone to take a picture so that if you do go to a doctor, you can show the doctor what the problem was. That's sensible. But frankly, if I were unsure about a tick, like you're asking me, how do you know? I'd get to the nearest emergency room or doctor, not try to do it all myself. That's not what the Washington Post recommended. And aside on that, they said we're repellent. And Consumer Reports not long ago did a good study on insect repellents. And some of them were working quite well, although not those that you usually hear on late night TV promising to protect your barbecue. But citronella didn't work.
Oh, really?
And my mother always used to have me put on citronella when we were going outside to avoid mosquito bites, which and in my case, often really bad. The whole back would be covered. But citronella doesn't work. DEET does, and there's several others Consumer Reports recommends. Now, let me ask you, we know that there's a worry about AI. What comes out of it are going to be harmful. And many of the best scientists in the world, like Jeffrey Hinman, and Yoshua Bengio, who invented much of what is now modern AI, have said, we are worried and we must find a way to protect against that. That makes sense. I don't think people are going to give up the internet because of these dangers. I don't think we're going to prohibit the internet, and we're certainly not going to prohibit most uses of artificial intelligence. Why am I sure of that? Because a few days ago, world leaders and all the big companies, from at least the ones from the US, came together. They had met in England about 4 months ago, and now met in Korea. And what came out of it was an official announcement that all the companies have agreed to put in what they called a kill switch for AI in case it got dangerous. That's what a lot of people have been said who look at this problem say you want to do, and most of them say it's not going to work.
Yeah, well, what are they talking about a kill switch? I mean, kill the whole thing? How you gonna?
Well, it's like, how do you deal with it? You go and pull the plug on the computer.
Well,
That's why
Hal said, Dave, I'm not going to let you do that, Dave.
this is a really complicated thing that is having literally billions of dollars being spent. OpenAI has committed $200 million itself. And in fact, if you have to put up safeguards against these problems, if you have any skill towards AI in that, they're hiring like mad because they know, everybody knows this is potentially a problem. I just saw a thing from an MIT grad student who said, what does he think? Well, as far as he can tell, there's maybe a 5% chance. That's my instinct as well, that the chance is small, but the consequences are so serious, we've got to protect against it. From Korea came out this agreement that said they were going to put in a kill switch. It was nothing of the sort.
That sounds ridiculous.
That
sounds like public relations.
Absolutely. The big American companies got together and put out a proclamation at this big meeting in Korea that they would have, that the headline was kill switch. Nothing of the sort. What they're doing is they're saying that if they discover they are in a dangerous position, they will stop until they can solve the problem and put up sufficient protection. Well, who decides when that point is?
Yeah. What's the definition of that? And like I said, who decides? Okay.
What the definition of that is whatever the companies think of putting a definition together.
Yeah, there you go.
Literally, that's what's in the official announcement. The companies were all going to figure this out and put that out. Frankly, if this is important, you don't want to trust companies who are desperate to make money by getting products out there.
To make them stop getting the products out there. That's not going to happen.
And so many people, including the Prime Minister of England and just about everybody neutral in the field of AI, is saying we have to regulate at least about that, and ideally about some of the other harms we're hearing, like these deep fakes and child pornography and scams. The US, they are one of the people in Washington complained that every time she goes to a hearing or listens or goes to a meeting about AI dangers and regulation, it is swamped by lobbyists from Google. Now OpenAI is getting into it. Amazon has always been big. And why don't we have privacy regulations? Why don't we have sensible regulation? Why don't we? Well, why don't we? And answer a whole lot of that is because the companies are so rich. They are spending hundreds of millions of dollars buying the best silver tongues they can find in Washington, putting out enormous amounts of misleading information. Well, we know that the web can give you tools to make misinformation out there, and that is why the US does not have anything like what even the EU has, which has several rules about privacy that are being enforced and are being enforced with literally $1 billion penalty. We don't even have a law precluding that.
Right.
Yeah. Now, how much time do we have?
Just about 2 minutes, Dave. What do you want to talk about? Like, one of the things that I saw a story, I don't know if you want to get into, was with AI and Google and their search, and how Google is changing or modifying or supposedly improving their search using AI. But there's a lot of pushback from folks that feel as though they're being discriminated against.
Well, it's true. Google has 90% of all the searches. And the way most people work on the internet, if they go beyond Facebook and social networking, is finding things on Google. So Google is enormously important. A few months ago, they changed their algorithm. The result was that many sites, public interest, general information, are finding their traffic has gone down, often 20 and 30%. That's a lot.
Yeah.
The New York Times wasn't affected by that algorithm, as far as I can see.
Of course not.
Well,
the story that I read, Dave, was the same story, but one of the pieces that I pulled out was a small company that called House Fresh that created scents for the home, and how their business took off, and I think it was 2020, largely as a result of their website and all the hits they were getting on Google. They were able to build up the business. They hired 14 employees. They're doing really well. And then September 2023, Google made a major updates in their algorithm search functions, and it totally decimated this company's business. I mean, they didn't say they went down to zero, but they went from thousands to hundreds of hits per day. And basically, they're about to be out of business as a result of that. And you go to the search to Google now and look for those air freshener type products, and it takes you to all the big boys. And so I'm not surprised.
No.
Yes.
No. The new stuff from Google does not just take you to the big boys or to Reddit to find commentary. Now, in more and more of your Google searches, and they intend to do it everywhere, and Bing on Microsoft and presumably others, when you do a search, they don't give you links until after they've given you an AI answer to your question.
Mm.
So if I go to Google now, and I happen to be in their testing labs, and ask for something, I will see several paragraphs from their AI about the topic. Now, they're often very useful, although we know AIs often make mistakes, but often they have the answers to whatever my question is. I don't even look at the links below that.
Yeah, so it's now not just search, it's search and answer.
Yeah. And, I go out there, I go to Google because I'm trying to find the name of the Secretary General of the International Telecommunications Office. And if it's right there on top, I don't go any further. So it's a good thing in terms of usability. It's going to be very big, and it is going to literally, as far as everybody is concerned, and I'm sure this is true, literally decimate most of the web, including things like the New York Times and Fox and the most important government websites with health information. Because people who don't go down and click on something of the search will fall away probably more than 10%, I said decimate, of the traffic on the internet. And that is going to be really serious killer of the business model of an awful lot of publications.
So now,
I'm not saying
the small businesses, the example that I cited about the small air freshener company, what's going to happen to small businesses that are on the web and, they go through this whole, there's all kinds of engineering that you do to make your site more attractive to the search engines. Is that just going to disappear? I mean, it sounds like what you're saying, Dave, if I hear you right, Google is going to answer your question. So you're not even going to go deeper and look for more information. Is that how the AI with Google is going to work?
That's how my Google works now, because I was in the Google Labs program, and I was one of the first that's going to roll out around the world to everybody on Google. That is, will that destroy the web? No, but it probably will decimate. Remember, decimate is 10% coming from the Latin, but it's more than that. Most of the web over the next year or two. I don't have an answer to that.
Okay.
I think it's a service from Google that helps me find information, which is their goal. But Google is so big and has such control. 90% of the internet searches in the US, Europe, and everywhere in the world, except for China, that includes India now. Google has something, so much market power, is so close to a monopoly that they can do whatever they feel like. And they do.
Can and do. Wow.
And that's one of the issues. Today in Geneva is a meeting put together by the UN on AI for good. And there's a lot of panels there. You can go to the ITU and find the links with serious people about how could you build guardrails? What do we have to do? And Another thing that somebody just said at a meeting in Germany, political meeting, somebody from AI Now, is the web is dominated by a few giants. We all know in theory power of the giants. We should do something about it. Antitrust and competition. And if we don't get Donald Trump as the next president, Lena Khan, who's at the FTC, will be able to follow through on the antitrust suits she has filed against Google and Amazon, and several others like that, because there's a good reason in society that if there's something with great market power, not an absolute monopoly, but big enough to make a notice, it's the right thing to do something about it.
Okay. This has been Community Technology every Wednesday, 5 p.m. on WHCR 90.3 FM, the voice of Harlem. Tune in. You just might learn something. Thanks. Good night.